Hey everybody, what's going on? Helmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today, and as you'll probably notice, this is not League of Legends. There was a very major announcement to Legends of Runeterra today that talking about the future of Legends of Runeterra and rotations, and I really wanted to make a video about it today, so apologies for those of you who clicked on this expecting League of Legends content. Not that today, guys. That will resume next Monday, but I really wanted to talk about this, so hopefully you guys stay put and take a look at what's going on. I know some of you guys know that I've been doing Legends of Runeterra content a little bit here and there off and on, and I really like this game, and the announcement today about the rotation that Riot are going to be putting into Legends of Runeterra has got me all sorts of just not happy with the direction that they are planning on taking the game, and I wanted to talk about specifically why. Now, for those of you who haven't read the article yet, it will be linked down in the description if you want to take a look at that, but suffice it to say, Riot are planning on separating out Legends of Runeterra into two separate formats. Right now, there is only the one format. Every card that has ever been released in Legends of Runeterra is currently legal, and what Riot plan to do is create two separate formats, one of which they are going to call Standard, and one of which they are going to call Eternal. In Standard, most of the cards in the game are legal, but there are some that will not be legal in Standard, and this is where the rotation comes in, but we'll get to that here in a second. And in Eternal, all cards in the game are legal, just like they are right now. Riot plan on having this rotation about once a year, where they will move cards into and out of both formats, while mostly keeping Standard the same size. Now, generally speaking, I am in favor of rotating formats for trading card games as a whole. I think it does a very good job of helping to keep certain degenerate combos out of the current metagame. I think it does a really good job of allowing the current metagame to not stagnate too much. Obviously, if you hit on a really solid strategy, for example, Magic the Gathering players may remember Siege Rhino back during Khans of Tarkir days, and how that was just the meta strategy until Siege Rhino rotated out, right? And that's what rotation helps with, is constantly refreshing the environment and making sure that no one is stuck playing the same things for too long, and making sure that if there is a degenerate combo or a very overtuned card, that it isn't legal in the format forever. However, I think that the way in which some of these other trading card games do their rotations works because it's a physical medium. And what this means is that a lot of times, and I'm going to use Magic the Gathering as my example because I'm most familiar with that, but it's not the only card game to have a rotating format. What Magic the Gathering does is every couple of years, the oldest 4 sets that are currently in Standard just drop out of Standard entirely. They are no longer playable, all the cards printed in them aren't legal. What that means, however, though, is that because Magic the Gathering is a physical card game, Wizards of the Coast are able to reprint things that they want to see in Standard. For example, if for whatever reason they decide green really needs a potent finisher at 6 mana in Standard and at Common, they can look back through their extensive library of cards and say, oh hey, we have this Colossal Dreadmaw card that we printed a while back, we can put that in this set, and therefore green has this advantage. And now obviously if you were playing back when Colossal Dreadmaw was first printed, you may even have copies of it and be able to say, oh cool, well I'll just dig them up out of my collection and play them again. If you don't though, you can obviously get it in the new set. And this is something that they're allowed to do because it's a physical card game format. They're allowed to reprint these kinds of things. The reason though that this format doesn't work with Legends of Runeterra is because it's not a physical card game first. Saying, you know, oh, Mystic Shot is back in Standard has less weight to it when I have Mystic Shot and never have to worry about Mystic Shot, and the availability of Mystic Shot is never going away. If, you know, even if Mystic Shot theoretically rotated out of Standard, I could still unlock the card in Eternal. I could have started playing the game yesterday, and I could unlock Mystic Shot immediately, as opposed to Magic the Gathering, where if there's a really cool card that I wanted that was printed 10 years ago, I may not be able to find packs, I might not be able to find it online, I'm literally hoping for a reprint at that point. Legends of Runeterra doesn't have that problem, so reprinting things in this game doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and so then you lose a lot of the onus on being able to rotate formats. Being able to say, oh, Mystic Shot is in this format again, is more or less Riot just saying, you're allowed to play it now. It's always been in your collection, you've always been able to get it, but you're allowed to play it, which takes a lot of the excitement out of reprints and instead makes it more of a disappointment thing, right? Like, ugh, Mystic Shot is going to be back. And this is all just an example, of course. The other issue, of course, is that right now, Riot cannot rotate out sets the way that Magic the Gathering does. If you were to start rotating sets in Legends of Runeterra starting with the oldest, you would rotate out the entirety of Foundations, which is the majority of the card pool for 5 entire regions. Demacia, Noxus, Shadow Isles, they would all lose a lot of their big staple cards and would essentially become unplayable regions as far as a metagame strategy could go. Of course, you could splash the cards in other decks, and there has been enough support released for them over time that you could still play some strategies, but a vast majority of their cards would be gone, especially key staples, things like, for example, Mystic Shot, or Vengeance, or Single Combat, right? These cards that a lot of decks run would just no longer exist. And if they were to continue the rotation, next up would be Bilgewater. All of Bilgewater would get snapped out of existence like Thanos. So you can't necessarily do that, and part of it's because you don't reprint, right? They don't try to aim for a color balance with each of their new sets. They tend to just release the newest thing and say, and this will work with all of your older cards as well, so they kind of can't take this approach. What they have chosen to do instead is essentially pick random champions and rotate them out. Essentially, they just choose things and decide what they want to remove. Now, primarily the way that they've structured this, and you guys, they may have said something elsewhere, I'm not entirely sure. There was a Reddit post a while back where Riot specifically said, here's how we are going to be doing our rotation. But what they said was, we're going to pick certain champions and their supporting cards and remove them from Standard. And that sounds fine on paper, but immediately hits a host of problems. First, how are these champions chosen? Well, effectively at random. Riot have mentioned a couple of the champion cards that they plan on rotating out, Aurelia, Twisted Fate, and Vladimir, and their reasons are alright for what they want to do with the cards when they're rotated out, but I disagree with the idea that champion cards are essentially picked at random. Vladimir, for example, is held up as a champion card that doesn't quite work within their region or struggles to find their footing. And I won't say that this is necessarily not true about Vladimir, but I think there are other champion cards for which this holds true as well. I think that there are a lot of very niche champion cards that have one deck maybe that they ever go in, or which just don't really have a region or a deck in which they can thrive. Katarina, for example, has basically fallen out of favor in every deck that wanted to play her previously, and so as a result, it was a literal coin toss, right? Vladimir or Katarina, who gets it? And that feels bad then when Riot basically says, we flipped a coin, we threw a dart at a board, and your favorite champion is no longer in Standard for the next year. Have fun. This also then has a knock-on effect on the rest of the game. They do even allude to this a little bit with Azir and Aurelia, where Aurelia is being removed from Standard, which means Azir can be explored in other decks. I've already done this, but sure, fine, whatever. You can explore Azir in other formats. However, if you removed a card like, let's say, Rek'Sai, Pyke would be unplayable. You didn't rotate Pyke. He's still totally in the game, but without the rest of the Lurker cards, Pyke's main deck, the Lurk deck, basically doesn't exist. And this is kind of a problem then, right? How are you choosing these champions? There isn't essentially a reason or rhyme for any of it. They're just picking stuff at random, and you have to deal with the knock-on effects of this. There's also a question of what do they mean by their supporter card pools? What counts as support for a champion card? Does Syncopation count as a support card for Aurelia? Will that leave with her, or is that staying? I would argue that there's nothing about it that specifically says this is only for Aurelia. You could play this in other decks. Does it count as a support card, though? Because it came out with her, and you can play it in her deck. Garen is an elite. If Garen was rotated, would all elite cards be rotated along with him? That would certainly have a huge knock-on effect, given the number of elites and elite supporting cards that currently exist in the game, right? Is there going to be a set number of cards you plan on rotating, right? You pick the 10 most popular cards played with that champion. This might be generic support, right? Garen can synergize well with Single Combat. Does that mean Single Combat rotates out with him because it's a Garen support card? It just doesn't make a lot of sense the way they have it lined up. It just doesn't work for me because there's no rhyme or reason for any of this. There's no easy way of breaking it down. It's basically just whatever we decided arbitrarily that we wanted to rotate out in the name of diversity and fairness. And I think that this is it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And a lot of the reasons why Riot are doing this rotation, they gave all of these reasons in their article, but I disagree with almost all of these. They mention available design space shrinks, because if they've already printed a 2-mana spell that does 2 damage to something at fast speed, you can't reprint that again without making it objectively better or objectively worse. And if you make it objectively worse, no one plays it, no one wants it, it doesn't actually have an effect on the game. And that's well and good, except for the fact that Eternal is still a format. So if you print a 3-mana fast spell that deals 2 to something, it's still objectively worse than Mystic Shot. Eternal has not been affected in the slightest. If you play Eternal, cool, I don't care that that card exists because Mystic Shot is still in the game, and I am always going to play that over this new card, right? Your design space isn't increasing based on the number of cards you've arbitrarily banned from Standard. It's the same amount of design space in your game as a whole. You're just deciding what is going to be playable and what isn't. They mentioned the amount of cognitive load required to keep all of the information on the top of the mind. Again, I think this is a misnomer for I would say this is more of a problem for Eternal and not a problem at all for Standard. Even the most recent tournament, top players tend to congregate around whatever the strongest decks are. In this case, there were a lot of people playing Kai'Sa Demacia. And in this regard, then, you know what those decks are playing, you know what the available tech choices are for those decks. Pros aren't going to be wildly playing different things. You're not going to see 100 plus metagame decks that are all running, 40 unique cards. It's just not how this works. People find what the best strategy is, and they play that, and there will be a tier list of best strategies, right? There may even be a dozen decks. That's still doable. You can definitely still look at your opponent's deck and kind of be able to tell what they might have put in it. And I don't think that removing cards from the metagame is going to fix that problem. People will always be playing whatever the best things are. You make it easier for players to remember every card that ever exists, but that's an irrelevant goal because there are always going to be cards that are not playable. Soul Gorger, when was the last time you saw that wasn't in the beta and wasn't in a jank deck? Probably never. That card is just not playable, and that's just a facet of card game design. You can never have every single card in your card pool 100% playable all of the time, and as a result, you always will have a lower cognitive load because there are huge swaths of the card pool that you're never going to see in a professional or competitive environment and will therefore never have to worry about it. Riot said things about underappreciated champions having a rougher time reaching playability. This only is relevant if you're playing ranked. I play Demacian Elites. I don't care about ranked. Even I do play Demacian Elites and ranked, but that's just the deck I like playing the most. I am always going to be playing that deck. I don't care if the champions are underappreciated or that they aren't playable. I'm playing it regardless. It is, again, only a problem if your goal is to be the very best and to climb the ranked ladder. And if Riot are trying to move Standard in that direction, that's fine, but then why would you also offer a casual ranked queue alongside a ranked Standard queue? It just doesn't make any sense. Playtesting and tech and quality, keeping bugs down, becomes significantly harder. You still have that problem. Eternal still exists, right? You are still going to have to iron out the bugs, unless this is you saying, we're not going to do that for Eternal. If things break in Eternal, screw you guys, we're not going to worry about it. So all of these reasons that they're giving for a rotation basically don't exist and don't matter unless you're specifically talking about we want things to look really good for the top 1% of our player base, which is our pros. Everybody else, we're going to split you into two separate formats with two separate queues apiece and basically say, have fun, you guys, figure it out. The quality of matchmaking will get worse. The wait times in queue will get worse. And generally, Riot are saying that their solution to make the top percentage of pro play better is by arbitrarily picking cards to rotate out, by throwing darts at a board and saying, yeah, that guy, get him out of here. I don't like this solution. I don't know that I have a better solution for Riot, but I also think that the current solution is not very good, and I would very strongly advise them to go against working with this. But those are my opinions. You guys left them know what you think of the idea of a rotation Legends of Runeterra down in the comment section below. I don't think I like the plan that they currently have. I don't know that Legends of Runeterra can support a rotation, but if you guys see a way in which this could work, or if you guys really like this idea, again, let me know all of that down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. I don't normally do Legends of Runeterra content, so if you are here for Runeterra, it happens very infrequently, but hey, if you want to see more of it, let me know down in the comments, and I have a whole playlist I'll have linked in the description as well for you guys to check out. Once again, though, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. Thanks for you guys hanging with me through this sort of weird ranty video, and I will talk to you all later.